Terry Labonte muscles his way past Dale Jarrett to win a very wild Pontiac 400 at Richmond on Saturday night. Our driver panel discussion of the race twists and turns next on Inside Winston Cup Racing. Hi, welcome to Inside Winston Cup Racing. Alan Bestwick in our Charlotte studios. No, it was not a full moon Saturday night in Richmond, but it kind of looked that way at the end of the race. We're here to discuss the Pontiac 400 with our abbreviated expert panel of drivers. Joining us, driver of the Cheerios Taurus for Roush Racing, Johnny Benson, and the Citgo Ford for the Wood Brothers, Michael Waltrip. Michael, started 40th, finished 40th, excuse me. We're running fairly well until about 60 laps to go.
Yeah, evidently we ran over something. I heard the tire start to go, and the thing just spun out. And we were going to finish in the top 20 around that, and that was going to be decent for us because we struggle at Richmond a lot, and we pretty much had the deal where we could run pretty good. But this video right here will show you what happened.
Where we listen to those ugly sounds.
Right, you can hear the tire go.
Uh-oh.
And that's not good.
No.
As a result,
wasn't good for the camera.
I pulled in the pit and I said, let's see what we can do this thing, get her going again. And then I happened to look in the mirror and there wasn't anything back there. I said, I'll pull them through here and get back to the truck if that's what y'all want me to do. And they said, yeah, go on. So it shortened her up pretty bad.
Tough night for Michael. Johnny started 8th. You were in the top 10 for most of the night, led some. And then with about 17 to go, things all kind of fell apart in a big way.
Oh, man, it was bad on the backstretch there. Rudd spun, and we were doing pretty good, and then all of a sudden got a little help here and pushed me through, turned me around, and my buddy Chad, teammate, got me a little bit, and then we had all kinds of problems. We tried to fix it, and, you know, we thought, man, we only got a couple of laps, and then apparently a fender was rubbing on the right front, and then coming around, was it 2 laps to go, cut a right front, and just killed it going into one, so
Did you really?
It was bad.
Spent the last couple laps scraping around the outside of the racetrack, showering sparks everywhere, and we'll see a little bit of that later on. Johnny ended up still finishing 18th, only 1 lap down to the race leader. Kenny's not here with us tonight. He started 7th and finished 4th and had himself a good run in the Skull Car. All right, some headlines now of the week. Well, leading up to the green flag Saturday night, we'll start with qualifying on Friday night. The track record fell in a big way when Jeff Gordon made this lap. 125.558 miles an hour average around the 3/4 mile track to claim his 3rd Bud Pole Award of the 1998 season and the 19th of his NASCAR Winston Cup career. Also Friday night at Richmond, Jeff Burton won in the NASCAR Busch Series race after a terrific duel with Dale Earnhardt Jr. And Friday night down in the Lone Star State, Tony Raines won the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race there at the Texas Motor Speedway. Saturday at Richmond, Jack Roush announcing that Exide Batteries has extended its contract to back Jeff Burton's ride for another 3 years through the 2001 season. The Tyler Jet team, formerly Darrell Waltrip Motorsports, has hired that man, Phil Hammer, to be its new crew chief as they continue preparations to return to the Winston Cup circuit around the Indianapolis race. Speaking of returns, Ricky Craven's going to look to get his medical clearance this week, hopes to test at Watkins Glen next week, and then perhaps enter the NASCAR Busch Series race up there on June the 28th, the Lysol 200, as a warm-up, if you will, a get back in the swing of things attempt before he hopes to get back into the Budweiser Chevy and come to the Winston Cup Tour on July the 4th for the Pepsi 400. So those are some of the headlines of the week leading up to the race at Richmond Saturday night. Let's talk about the Busch Series race Friday night just for a minute, Michael, because the Band-Aid Ford was in the race.
It was a great race. We saw a lot of action. We started 33rd in that race as well, just like we did the Cup race. And
consistent.
Yeah, consistent. Worked our way up to 20th, but that's about all we had. Our car didn't handle like we needed it to. It pushed all night long, and it's just amazing the way you run a Busch car at Richmond these days. You go down in the corner, and when you let off, as soon as you let off, pretty much if you got the car it takes to run up front, you mat it back wide open, and it's more of a challenge to drive a Busch car, it seems like, at Richmond than it is a Winston Cup, at least physically, because you're totally in the gas all the time.
Qualifying Friday night at Richmond. Stories of the evening?
Man, I tell you what, qualifying surprised me on the times. I mean, it looks like they put a little bit of sealer on the track like they did last year. We talked about that last week, and Goodyear brought an awesome tire, and everybody was quick, and times were just so tight. like it is, and like I say, Jeff posted a pretty good time.
Yeah, pretty stiff there. So new track record for Jeff Gordon. One other item of news happening right this week as we speak. Testing at night under the lights down in Daytona. We'll talk about that on next week's program. Coming up when we return, though, this time around, the Pontiac 400 from Richmond. Our discussion next.
Today on Inside Winston Cup Racing, we'll also look ahead to next week's Miller 400 at the 2-mile high-speed Michigan Speedway. And have you ever wondered why one driver placing farther down in the finish order might make more money than drivers ahead of him? We'll find out in our question of the week. Inside Winston Cup Racing is brought to you by AC Delco Automotive Parts. AC Delco, if you're not asking for it, you're asking for it.
I thought the yellow was coming out when I passed Dale. There was a car in the wall somewhere, and so I was committed under him there and got up under him and got down on the apron a little bit, and we got together down there, and I hate it. I know he's a little mad, but I didn't do it on purpose. So.
Terry Labonte in victory lane Saturday night at Richmond after a pretty wild finish to the Pontiac Excitement 400. Welcome back to Inside Winston Cup Racing. Here to review the event now with Johnny Benson and Michael Waltrip. Start with the numbers on the event. Our race summary showing us that 7 cautions for 47 laps slowed the race, and almost all of that was in the final 50 laps. 13 finishers on the same lap with the race leader, and the race did end under the yellow flag. The first 3 quarters of the race were really exceptionally clean. The stories were a great charge through the field by Terry Labonte, who started back in 16th position and was up front. In fact, took the lead away at lap 81 from Sterling Marlin. So Terry moving up through the field rather rapidly in the early going. A series of green flag pit stops between laps 110 and 120 had Dale Jarrett and Sterling Marlin finding some problems. Here's that lap 81 pass. Okay, I'm a little ahead of myself. I'll slow down. I'm going to lap myself here in a minute. There is the pass, lap 81. Okay, go ahead. Thank you. He finished pass. Now, green flag pit stops. This was a caution right after that. Jarrett had a missing lug nut. Marlin needed a different set of tires. Set them back to 12th or 13th in line. Michael's problem at lap 343 brought all the leaders to pit road under the caution. Rusty Wallace's crew got the job done the quickest. He took the lead for the first time in the race at lap 345, and all of this set up the wild ending to the race that we'll be discussing in just a minute. All right, early race, track conditions, car tendencies, the effect of the sealer on the track. Have at it.
Well, Richmond they've really found something with that sealer. It works perfectly. I mean, the track has so much more grip than it had prior to the sealer. And last fall, when there were 3 events, the trucks and then the Busch cars, by the time the Winston Cup race started, there wasn't much sealer left. So during the off-season between the 2 events, they resealed it. And that sealer, while we did see it wear away a little bit after Friday night's race, it was still really good on Saturday night. And we saw cars. It's so much fun when you see cars running high and cars running low, and there's extra room to race. And Richmond is an exciting racetrack with a lot of room to race. And you just have to commend them on the job they did with the sealer and the job they did paving that track. What, 12 years ago, 10 years ago? They paved it in the middle of the summer, and we raced there in September, and it was 900 degrees on. We had, and I never will forget, we had Hoosier tires and Goodyear both, a tire war, and the track just has been there ever since. It's pretty amazing.
Johnny, conditions Saturday night, tendencies of the cars, that kind of thing?
Just like Michael said, I mean, I kind of hate that they found a sealer that works, because now other people are going to try it. Normally, it doesn't work out that great, and it did. I mean, it started to wear away at the bottom, bring some of the old track back, and everybody started moving up, which was great for us because we could hook right on the bottom. We come up through and actually led there before that first yellow, and man, I thought we were in pretty good shape on long runs. We were a little bit hurting a little bit on the short little deals, but on the long runs, the car was really good, and there was 2 grooves. You could race just about anywhere.
First 3 quarters of the race, just a lot of different guys took turns up front. You had Jarrett, you had Terry Labonte, you had Sterling Marlin, you had Jeff Gordon, and they all took their share out in front. But with about 35 laps to go, that's when the fireworks began and things got kind of interesting. Rusty Wallace leads off that pit stop. Jeff Gordon's working on him for the lead, 29 to go. Yeah.
This was not a good situation, I guess you could say, and I don't know, they're racing awful hard. Man, Jeff gave him plenty of room, it looked like. I mean, there's a lot of racetrack down there yet, but, you know, everybody's going hard, and they bumped and Jeff went around.
Well, Rusty, you could see his car. I really feel like his car got a little bit loose, and he chased it up the hill, and up the hill was the 24 car, and into the wall it went. And you know, I know Rusty Wallace. He's not going to run down the corner and intentionally take out Jeff Gordon. Car gets a little sideways there. He corrects it, winds up hitting Jeff, and around Jeff goes. I'm sure the fact that he didn't do it intentionally doesn't make Gordon feel any better today, but
no.
You know, that's important. I think that we point, you know, that I state that he did not wreck him on purpose.
Under this caution, all the leaders pit except Dale Jarrett, Ken Schrader, and Ricky Rudd. The tires versus track position thing here. Why did they stay out? Why did everybody else pit?
They must have known something that everybody else didn't know, that things were going to go pretty bad here, because I think the tires was the way to go. Obviously, the tires did win the race, but man, that was pretty gutsy move to stay out on tires, especially at Richmond. You know, Richmond's normally really hard on tires. They had some laps on them. They still had whatever, I don't remember how many laps it was to go, and that was a tough call. Now, we kind of debated, but we knew that tires was going to be the way to do, but then all of a sudden everything happened, and of course hindsight's a pretty good deal. You could have looked back and said, well, staying out would have been good, but
yeah, hindsight would have been a pretty good deal. Just after the stop, you got Jarrett, Schrader, and Ricky Rudd running 1, 2, 3 on the restart. Ricky tries to jump to the inside of Kenny off turn 2 to get the second spot and go after the win. There he is down the bottom.
Rudd had a strong car all night long, and the thing gets away from him there. He just got her down low, and when you pinch those things down low, and you can see in the back here a yellow car getting a push from a black one and turns around into a wall, and the car's spinning everywhere. Somebody hits the wall there on the inside. You can't imagine how congested things, well, you can't imagine, you can just look and see, but on restarts, if something goes wrong, it gets bad in front. Yeah, it gets bad in a hurry.
And there's not a lot of laps, you know, and everybody's trying to go. And I mean, what you see there is what we see is nothing, you know, behind that. And like I said, some of us got slowed down, some didn't. A lot of bumping and banging, spinning going on, parts flying. And we were all part of it.
Does the night intensify the smoke? Does it make it even harder to see through than it might in the daylight? No?
I think that the sealer made for a lot of smoke there, and
more smoke than normal.
Yeah, it was probably the old track, but you know, that's just part of it, and nobody could see, and not everybody got slowed down, and we just we got caught up in it. We got caught up in it and come in and try to fix the car. They made us come in a couple times, getting some pieces dragging and things of that nature, and they got most of it out except for the last yellow.
We will continue our look back at the events of the end of the Pontiac 400 from Richmond Saturday night in just a minute. Don't go away. Welcome back to Inside Winston Cup Racing, reviewing the Pontiac 400 from Richmond Saturday night with Johnny Benson and Michael Waltrip. We're about set to go back racing with a little over 10 laps to go. Dale Jarrett's leading, Ken Schrader's second, both on older tires than Terry Labonte, who's third. And we wave the green and send the field steaming off into turn number 1. But somebody else is steaming there. That's Kevin LePage subbing for David Green in the Caterpillar car. Dropped something. They said it might have been a radiator hose.
It was definitely slippery, I know that. I was just going into one, and I saw two guys in front of me go up and hit the wall, and man, I was all over the brakes knowing that there was something there, and I about did the same, and it was just soaked the track down with whatever. I'm not sure what it was. And, you know, you see NASCAR decided to go ahead and throw the red flag on this deal, and, you know, I'm sure Jarrett's pretty mad over this because it's something that doesn't happen much, but I think that NASCAR did the right thing, and they throw the red, and, you know, people are always complaining that the races are finishing under yellow, and they thought that this would be a great way for the fans to see a race finish under green.
They didn't know it was still going to finish under yellow.
Well, they didn't.
Good point there. A point on my part to make, you guys can comment on it. This is the 5th time this year that NASCAR's put the red out in a race. All of it after generally accidents that have littered the track with debris or something that was going to take a while to clean up. It just hasn't happened quite this close to the finish. Should it be any different when it's this close to the finish? If they're consistent about using the red when the track has a lot of stuff on it like they have been this year.
Well, I think that's an interesting point, and it's something that can be argued from both sides. I kind of like it. I like at California when we had the the big wreck in the middle of the race. It's no fun just to ride around under caution, and it's not what the fans come to see. There's going to be enough cautions of just the normal variety where you're under yellow for 10 or 12 laps. Somebody can go get them a beer and a pizza if they want to and come back and be ready to see the action. But when the track is totally a mess, I think it's great that they throw the red flag. This comes into a different deal, though. If that was just water out of the back of the car, it dried up. They didn't have to throw a lot of speedy dry or whatever. But how did they know? It looked like it could have been oil, and they could have been there forever. So I'm sure when it gets into the final 10 laps of the race, it would be nice if we had some sort of rule or some sort of guideline. You know, if NASCAR says if there's a caution in the last 10 laps of the race, we're going to throw the red. That's just going to be the way it is, or something along those lines. But it's a good deal that they use it, I think. That just kind of got into the part of the race where guys had played strategy, and their strategy was going to work if it hadn't been for the caution or the red flag or whatever. So, you know, either way, you never know.
4 tires, Terry Labonte's fresher 4 tires versus Dale Jarrett's. Would he have caught him anyway?
It's hard to say. I mean, you know, I don't know what it was when the yellow come out. I mean, if Jarrett would have had 10, 15, 20 car lengths on him, well, it might have been tough. The track was slippery earlier. Some guys are dumping some stuff, and the track was real slippery. And it's just, you know, they did the right deal.
I think you'd have got them. I really do. I think that those tires, you run 1 or 2 laps, and the more you run, the more significant the difference in the tires become. It doesn't go away until you run maybe 20 laps. But you run 1 or 2, and then the next 2 or 3 you got on those new tires, you're going to be really fast because your air is getting to where you want it to be. Those tires are at their premium right then, so it would have probably been tough.
All right, here's the pass for the win here. Terry into turn 3.
Yeah, he looked like, you know, it was, I'm sure Jarrett's mad. There ain't no doubt about this, but he was just barely there, and I think Jarrett knew he was going to hold the bottom, and they touched, and up they went, and there's our yellow we were talking about. And
right, so Johnny bounces off the wall here. So watch as they come across the start-finish line. This is the race to the white flag, and the yellow is waving at the white flag there. So the race is over.
It's over, yeah.
But maybe just not so sure.
No, I don't think everybody, you know, I mean, they got this gentleman's agreement deal.
You got
about
a caution car on the bottom, you got Johnny on the top, the yellow flag's out.
And
what gear are you in right here? Are you down to first yet? Yeah. Looks like you just keep grabbing lower gears trying to get there. And Rusty's making a race out of this thing, and you know, it's just exciting for the fans. Short track racing always is, and that was insignificant because the race was over. But
you don't know. The problem is until you get back that line, that race is over. You don't know how they're going to score.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, probably Rusty trying to pass 2 guys might have been a different deal. I don't think Terry coming back to the line at all was. He knew the yellow was going to come out, but it wasn't out. So that justifies racing back to the line. And then after that, once the yellow's out, you know, but it's a white and a yellow, and it depends when you take that yellow. So it's really complicated there.
They try to explain it every week in the drama.
We can't. No, you can't explain that.
Show us the finish order here while we continue this, if you would, please. The rule is, if the yellow comes out during the white flag lap,
you race back.
You race back.
Just like any other lap.
That's after the leader's already crossed and taken the white flag. Exactly. In this case, the leader took the yellow at the white flag, so the race was over.
Yeah. But if you're running 3rd or 4th, and if it was just questionable whether that yellow flag was out yet or not, you're like, well, it might have been or it might not have been. I'm not real sure.
Argue it later.
Yeah, we'll argue about that later.
So after some time to review the photo finish camera of the white flag lap, the order was sorted out, and Labonte got his first win of 98. Gordon ended up 37th. After the little incident and crash there, and that has shuffled the point standings quite a bit. Citgo leaderboard shows us Jeff falling from 1st to 3rd, 47 up to 46 down. After the Richmond race, Mayfield is now the leader. Jarrett pulls into a tie with Mark Martin for the 4th spot, and the rest of the top 10 remain unchanged from the positions that they held a week ago. Michigan is Sunday, a preview coming up shortly. Question of the week comes from Brewston, Tennessee. Wants to know, why do some drivers win more money even though they placed further back in a race? Now, the last 3 weeks when we've shown the finish order of the race, you've asked that question. Here's your chance to explain it very quickly.
I don't know. That's a great question. I'm glad somebody wrote in. We'll investigate this, and when we come back next week, we'll have the answer to this question.
With that, we'll take a break. Come back and preview Michigan next.
If you have a question for our driver panel, mail it to us at IWCR Question of the Week, Post Office Box 240417, Charlotte, North Carolina 28224, or email us at www.speedvision.com. If we use your question, you'll receive this shirt from Chase Authentics. Chase Authentics, the authentic trackside apparel of NASCAR, is now available at NASCAR specialty stores and leading department stores everywhere.
Ernie Irvin scores an emotionally charged win at Michigan in the Miller Lite 400 1 year ago. The Winston Cup car is back at the 2-mile oval this coming weekend. We preview the race now with Johnny and Michael, starting with our tour around the racetrack. We start at the start-finish line, hopefully. This is off turn 4. Here we go.
The front straightaway is very sweeping. It's a longer straightaway than the back straightaway.
It's also not straight.
Yeah, it's true. And so gearing is a concern on the front straightaway because you have to kind of gear the car to get down the back side, and this front side's real long. Very sweeping, very smooth entry into the turn, and it's the same way off of turn 2 onto the back straightaway. It's just a real predictable racetrack.
The back straightaways is actually straight, so we go straight for a little ways, and nothing going on back there. You know, it's wide, but turn 3 is a little bit more narrow than turn 1, but there's a lot of racing room. There's a lot of side-by-side racing here at Michigan, and you turn 4, you come on out, and the front stretch is kind of like a free-for-all. You can get 3 or 4 wide down this front stretch.
That's right. And you can see the guy on the bottom here, people going by him. It's because the outside groove, the draft, really works good. You can get lined up on a guy, and it can be just like being at Daytona and getting out of the draft. If you get stuck down to the bottom, there's a lot of cars. It's hard to fight your way back to the ahead of them. So you see some great racing at Michigan, that's for sure.
And fuel mileage always seems to come into play in that race also. That'll be a big factor strategically, who can pit and go how far and so on Sunday, the Miller Lite 400 this weekend. I'm afraid of what you're going to do with that thing. This is our 100th show of Inside Winston Cup Racing. Kind of hard to believe, but here it is. We have the cake. We're going to feed our faces here in a little bit. And then next week on the program, we're going to kind of pull out some of the old highlights and the goof-offs and some of the fun times that we've had, and we'll show them to you, so I hope you'll be here with us next week. You want to cut that thing?
Yeah, I'd love to. You want a piece?
Is that a good... I'm not sure that's a good idea or not.
This cake, I've been sampling it as it's been sitting here, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. And I'd like to serve you. And thank you for all the hard work you've done here on Inside Winston Cup Racing in the last 100 shows. I've really enjoyed my tenure.
We're out of time. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
See you next Monday. Enjoy.
Inside Winston Cup Racing has been brought to you by Motel 6. Motel 6 has over 55,000 rooms renovated nationwide. Call 800-4-MOTEL-6 for reservations. The 1998 Team Simpson Racing Catalog is now available. For information, call 800-71-RACIN or visit the website at SimpsonRaceProducts.com and join Team Simpson today.